This is a rare opportunity. While I was interviewing George Noory for the Architects of the New Paradigm conference, Stephen Bassett showed up. I had to get the two of them on camera. If you listen to Coast AM and you listen to these guys having their debates, then you know that George and Steve have two completely different ideas about disclosure. Is Steve winning George over? So, as many of you know, I was one of the producers of the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure, and I have also assisted a lot with the Congressional Hearing Initiative. And who I have right here is Steve Bassett with George Noory. You guys were just on Coast to Coast to talk about the new interview with Hillary Rodham Clinton about her belief in the ET issue and what she's pledged to do. How do you feel about the progress on disclosure?
Well, I think people like Steve Bassett, who have devoted their lives and careers to uncovering this topic and getting disclosure to the forefront of the American people. They're phenomenal people. They're dedicated people. And I think what's beginning to happen in Washington is the politicians, as Steve will tell you in a second, are starting to realize the American public wants to know about this. And so in their own little way, they're starting to talk about it.
So tell me, George, can you envision, is it a little easier for you to envision the President of the United States walking out in the East Room and making the announcement that, we've got ETs?
In time, not with ETs flanked at his side
like David Wilcox said.
her side, but the smart president will do that.
Okay.
The smarter president will say, I had to go uncover this because they wouldn't even tell me, but I got the answer.
Okay, all right. Well, look, first of all, let me say this. Since the Coast to Coast show started in the early, mid-1990s, I first went on in 97, and since then I have done maybe 60 interviews on the show. It is the number one venue to interact with American people on this issue at length. Now, you can do 2 hours on Coast to Coast. I get 6 minutes on Fox News, right? And so that platform was the key to the exopolitics starting to grow, because now we had an audience that we could go to and explain in detail what was going on to 4, 5, 6 million people, and thus seed this issue. And that's been going on now for 20 years. And so I assure you that Coast to Coast is going to get a historical, kudos for its role that it played. Not only George, but also Art, Mike Siegel, everybody that was involved in that show that has brought these people on to talk about this issue, among these other things. But that was the platform that was most available to us in 1997, and we've used it as much as we can. It's always been available to us, always treated us well. And again, a lot of the credit, if we get an announcement for the president this year, which I believe is very possible, a lot of that credit is going to go to George, Coast to Coast, and that program.
You know, George, I sat with you at the X conference in Washington, D.C., and we talked about the possibility of disclosure the way Steve describes it, as the president or official political body coming out and acknowledging the ET presence. And your feelings then were that it probably wouldn't happen that way. And it's no secret that you and Steve see the disclosure process in two different ways. But after the work that he's been doing in Washington lately that you know about, is your opinion starting to shift that maybe we will get a political disclosure sometime soon?
Steve and I are at odds in a very good way about disclosure and how it will happen. I've always believed that the Edgar Mitchells, those kinds of folks, will get the word out to us before a politician will be. However, years later, after watching the efforts of people like Stephen Bassett pushing and driving and not giving up, I'm beginning to think maybe the right president will tell us the truth.
Well, see, the interesting thing is that...
Steve, that's got to feel good.
Well, no, I knew I'd win him over eventually, but here's the thing.
Not there yet.
Yeah.
Not there yet.
The beauty of the advocacy movement is that we can't be wrong because we have described disclosure. We've defined it. Mm-hmm. See, disclosure, when I use that word, I'm using it in a very specific way. Disclosure, with a capital D, is the announcement by the President of the United States. Nothing else. So other people can define disclosure in other ways, but the disclosure that I'm seeking can only come that way, right? So if it, and by the way, I don't know how it can come any other way other than ETs, right? So it's conceivable the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff would make an independent announcement. It's got to come from the President in order to be properly received, but he has to have cooperation from the Pentagon. They have to have an understanding which doesn't exist right now.
That's really coordinated.
And my job is to put so much pressure in the media and on the subject, particularly the politicians, that the Pentagon and the President realize they have to do this. And we are very close to that being the case. And so for me, disclosure is only one thing, and it's the announcement by the President. Everything else is small d disclosure, some of which is already happening, and there'll be a whole lot of more small d disclosure after big D disclosure as we press the government for the details.
Through the media and the TV shows.
Yeah.
I predict that in the not too distant future, as they begin to write the history books of the new paradigm, there will be an entire chapter on disclosure, and George Noory and Stephen Bassett will be people that history remembers as very instrumental.
Then George Noory.
Well, you were the media guy that got the word out, and Steve was the guy that worked tirelessly to get it done.
Let me tell you something. Disclosure is just an event. It's over in an evening, right? There's a lot of paragraphs to be built post-disclosure.
Absolutely.
Because I assure you, George, your shows, I think overall ratings are probably going to go up post-disclosure.
Even higher than they are?
Higher than they are now.
Fantastic.
So you're going to have much more work to do and a lot of interesting things to do. And so the books, the history doesn't stop there. The real history is going to be what happens in the years after disclosure. That's what's going to determine the 21st century.
So, George, you have something to look forward to, something to aspire to. This is George Noory and Steve Bassett. We're talking disclosure. Got these guys on camera together. So, you guys, thanks a lot for being here. If you like what we're doing, subscribe here on YouTube. If you'd like to go deeper, see more original content, all commercial free, go to ivolvetv.com and become a subscriber. We're repurposing the purpose of media, and we want you to join us.